graduating from a savings mentality is the sort of like space brain of FinOps, right? Because a lot of people arrive at FinOps with like a mandate to save. Can we just like cut it? And without any awareness or context over what that could mean.
Welcome to the first series of the Off Menu IT podcast. I am your host, Sean Ashbury, and in this episode, we are focused on Ternary's FinOps solution, which is one of 9 episodes that you can enjoy this season. This episode was recorded on the 22nd of October, and some of the proposed announcements may have already been released. This podcast is fully independent and does not accept payments from its guests. The mission is to help the ITAM community make better decisions through their own discovery. Let this podcast maximize your IT budgets and help improve your RFP process. In this episode, we have Joshua Kwan, who is one of 3 co-founders and current CTO at Ternary. Ternary is a multi-cloud FinOps platform for medium to large enterprises operating since 2020.
What is Ternary? What's your product? What's your service?
Right. So Ternary is a multi-cloud FinOps platform. So that means we ingest costs from all the major cloud providers and then some of the smaller SaaSes and public clouds that are less well known out there. And we bring that all into a single pane of glass so you can kind of track your spend as it changes day to day, because as we all know, public cloud is just, you click a button, things turn on, you start spending money. So we aim to help you get a handle on that and help you spend better. If not save money necessarily, I don't think that's always like the best goal, but spend better is something that the way I think about it that always resonates with me. Make sure you're getting the business value out of your cloud expenses. That's what Ternary aims to help you do.
What drew you to FinOps? I know that it was from COVID time where you started to build this. So, I mean, what inspired you and your co-founders at that time to create Ternary and the product?
Yeah. So the inspiration actually happened slightly before, because we were doing a cloud migration. We were all working together, my co-founders and I, at a company called LiveRamp. And at a certain point, we decided, hey, our core competency is ad technology, where our core competency is not operating a data center. So we wanted to divest ourselves of that. We're trying to move from data center to public cloud. And so we chose Google Cloud, and we started moving things over. And I was the sort of architect, kind of getting the people on teams to actually go move their stuff, which was running inside the data center, into Kubernetes on Google Cloud. So both a move and a replatform, as it were. So quite a difficult, quite a tall order. I think technically it went very well, but then we ended up having like a forecasted like $40 million overspend. If we didn't do anything, we didn't actually spend the 40 million, but if we did nothing at the end of the year, we would have spent 40 million over what we intended to. So that was a huge number. So we were scrambling to go find a tool that would have helped us do this. And we discovered, first of all, that the market wasn't that strong for it, especially for if you were building in Google Cloud. The products weren't connecting to Google Cloud. On top of that, like, we were also like unable, we didn't want to build something right there, right? We wanted to buy a tool. We couldn't find it. And so in trying to locate what we needed, we also discovered the FinOps Foundation, which was being birthed pretty much at that moment. My co-founder, Sasha, traveled to London, took part in one of the first like certification and training sessions for the whole foundation. So we were kind of in there from the ground floor. And we said, okay, like, we want something that connects to Google Cloud and helps us create FinOps in our organization. And that tool wasn't there. So we decided, our team decided, or rather people on our team, Sasha, Patrick, and I, our co-founders, decided to just leave LiveRamp eventually and go create the FinOps platform that would have helped us in Google Cloud, because it wasn't there.
Sure. So when you were at LiveRamp, all 3 of you were kind of at the forefront to make sure you're putting in manually creating the processes.
We had to go create, something that worked for LiveRamp, but that wasn't the same as creating like a generic product that could have helped anyone.
Obviously inspired by the 40 million of savings there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we got there. We pretty much got there just, with, kind of hitting the pavement, talking to the teams, working with the Google team on cost optimizations. And we got there, but it was much more chaotic than we would have liked.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure your tool certainly helps people to avoid going through that chaos. And but what an amazing inspiration for the journey that you're going on. Seeing the need and literally grabbing it by two hands, or six hands in this case.
Yeah, 6 hands.
You kind of touched on it there, that your unique offering, or that you realized there wasn't much in the market in terms of capability. So is that when you kind of realized there was a valuable offering in the market, or was it further on when you kind of start to research and build a product, you realized that there was more to come from this space?
I think, to be honest, the vision was pretty clear from the beginning. But I think the thing that was less clear was like things like the rules of automation. Like should the tool be doing stuff on behalf of the customer? Should it be guiding people into best practices and letting them make the tough decisions? This is something we've always grappled with, and we're still grappling with today. And I think that's the part that's more unclear. But I think the vision is of like, hey, this is a place where people can come and look at finance teams and engineering teams can look at the same thing, because usually they don't. And finance teams are looking at invoices, engineering teams are looking at Datadog or some other monitoring service to see how their reliability and stability is doing. They're not looking at the cost. Finance people are only looking at the cost, and only in a super high level way that doesn't resonate with the engineers and doesn't create like a call to action. Ternary, I would say from the beginning, was meant to be that single pane of glass that people could look at to agree upon and collaborate upon what to do. Because we found that at LiveRamp, we had success once the finance people and engineering people were sort of in like a neutral space and just trying to make trade-offs together, right? Where an engineer could say, hey, like, it would be faster and more reliable if we spent this much more money. And then the finance people would be like, well, we're trying to, land into this budget. What are some knobs we can pull in order to get closer to this, right? Once you have that sort of generic problem statement, and it's not like about like shame, like the finance people yelling down the engineering people's necks, it becomes more of a collaboration. And engineers love to problem solve, right? It's just that it needs to be framed as a problem that an engineer would like to solve and has the information to solve one.
And not pointing fingers at them for doing something that was wrong.
Exactly. And as an engineer myself, I feel that very deeply. I kind of feel like, sometimes the conversation in the FinOps Foundation, there's a lot of finance team practitioners in there, and they say things like, how do I get engineers to take action? And it sort of like has this suggestive feel to it, like they don't want to do it. And it's just like, I don't think that's the case. I think you just haven't framed it properly. As just an optimize. Engineers love to optimize, right? Just make it another optimization problem, and don't make it like a scary like dollars problem. Make it like a let's decrease our e-commerce cost per shopping cart from 10 cents to 8 cents. Can we try and do that? Right, like that is such a fun problem to try and tackle from an engineering perspective. But I think there's still sort of a ways to go, right, for kind of engineering and finance combined culture, FinOps culture, to mature and become healthy. But we're getting there.
Yeah, sure. And I guess from a unique perspective in terms of your background, obviously you're able to speak the engineering language. And out of interest, your co-founders, you mentioned they're all part of the same team. Are they also from an engineering background, or do they have kind of each a different perspective on how they see this?
Yeah, so I think our CEO, co-founder Sasha, was has spent many years in like startups and sort of kind of in the IT realm. So I think he was sort of intuitively aware of that push and pull between like, ultimately like cost of operations, right? It's like no matter what he did, he was always involved in that sort of like tension of like, let's spend more to make more, or let's make sure we're getting value out of our IT investments. And that's pre-cloud, right? So, it could be buying networking equipment, buying racks. And, I think that sort of intuition translated very well to FinOps. So I think like these types of conversations and the types of collaboration that need to happen to make an optimal business decision were quite familiar to him. I think for my other co-founder, Patrick, he was not actually that long into the IT and software field, but he had done a lot of work in the oil and gas industry. Actually, had been based in the UK for a while, and I think there he was also familiar with the power of connecting with people in order to solve problems. Right? You can't just rain orders down by fiat. You have to create relationships, and you have to create an environment that's amenable to problem solving. So I think that's sort of, where he came from.
Okay, fantastic. Of course, you had a really, very early success and vote of confidence in your product. So you're able to explain that first or early breakthrough success?
Yeah, there's a very large tech company out there, one of the largest users of cloud out there, and they were multi-cloud. And so I think they saw the combination of how we were an early team that was sort of just a group of smart people that wanted to make things work, more so than a company that had a very polished, put together product. Because we didn't, we were 1.5 years in, but I think they saw the bones of something that was great for them and that solved one of their immediate problems, was that their existing FinOps solution literally wasn't able to cope with the scale of their incoming usage. That company, the competitor company, had brought in custom tools. They had bought another data warehouse, Databricks. They just couldn't get the data in on time. We were built on a different technology, Google Cloud BigQuery, and that really led us to be able to show them, hey, we can turn this data around, from when it hits the place that the billing data lives, all the way to being visible in your platform and visible in your data warehouse, ready to think about an action on. It was halved, more than 24 hours to 8 at the most. So, and for a company that spends billions of dollars a year in cloud, 16 hours of unknown can be $1 million. You never know.
Yeah. So instant return on investment. And that's effectively what you guys are pushing, especially. I understand you have quite a considerable cloud spend, which you're currently managing. I mean, out of interest, what is the current client base as cloud spend?
Yeah. So we have about $7 billion of cloud spend under management. Yeah, that's growing month over month. And, full disclosure, that big customer does account for a sizable chunk of it, but we have a lot of diversifying customer base of all different sizes, pretty much as low as spending 100, 200K a month, all the way up to, the biggest SaaS players out there. And they come in through a variety of streams. We work with IT resellers of public cloud, and they can resell or they have a free pass to license our product downward to their downstream customers, and that helps those providers show their customers that they care a lot about their financial health and not to overspend.
So you obviously alluded there that you have quite a range of clients, from your large global well-known brand, but as far as kind of this medium to large businesses that you function with, is there any sort of specific enterprise that or sector that you typically focus on, or is it kind of just everyone who has a cloud would be able to benefit from your product?
Yeah, so this is kind of like a question about our ideal customer, right? So I think our ideal customer definitely spends, above 100K a month. That's kind of where things start getting a little complicated. And then things like reservations and commitments start to make a big dent. And also one of the biggest things that, help us stand out is that we're multi-cloud, right? So, if you're on a single cloud spending 100,000, you could get by on the cloud console of that provider, giving you visibility into your costs strictly within that provider. But once you're multi-vendor, multi-cloud, then, no cloud provider is going to give you a multi-cloud view, right? They don't want to cannibalize themselves, right? So, I think that's the main reason why people go looking for a tool, is that they don't want to be accessing 3 consoles. They don't want to be downloading 3 exports and then smooshing them together in Tableau or Excel or something like that. They want that part to be easier. And, I would say the cloud provider space isn't fulfilling that, but the third party space, is.
Would you suggest that's what your solution does well, and that is how it kind of excels compared to the other competitors?
Yeah, so I think multi-cloud is starting to become table stakes in our third-party provider space that we're in. Where we're trying to excel really is supporting these like resellers is one of the major initiatives we have right now, not the only initiative, but trying to support the day-to-day business operations of these resellers, right? So being able to show custom discounts, custom pricing that the reseller wants to apply downward to their customer, so they see what they should be seeing and what they're going to get invoiced on from the reseller. And in fact, I just looked at the code review for this yesterday, but we're about to let people invoice or resellers invoice their customers directly through Ternary. So it's sort of like broadening that scope where it's like we're not
Awesome.
just like a disconnected FinOps tool that an MSP can happen to license down to their customer. We're actually helping the MSP themselves operate their day-to-day customer needs and perform oversight over their entire customer base. So I think that, again, other competitors are also seeing this as well. I think we're the furthest along right now. And that's the world of startups, right? Someone is always thinking of the thing that you're doing or about to do, but you can just be farther.
You've just grabbed the bull by the horns per se, and you've just gone with it. And that is why your solution is, I guess, unique to others in the market, because you are further along in that respect.
Yeah, I think so right now. I mean, we have a bunch of other investments. So like, I think we're also thinking about integrating like private cloud costs. That's a growing area where, you really have to do, you're not going to get a monthly billing export from your data center, right? That's just not how it works. But giving a FinOps practitioner some tools to be able to use that pane of glass that is Ternary, visualize public cloud costs as well as associated private cloud costs that the same team might be using on one page, even if the numbers aren't like 100% correct. It's some way of being able to apples compare, like, okay, like, this team is partially in public, this team is partially in private. We want to see the whole picture as a fraction of the total cost of ownership of this data center and give this person like a reasonable number to understand their magnitude and scale and, control it, limit it, optimize it.
Fantastic. And one of the things you mentioned when we were kind of having our introductory call, it's about that your platform is extremely aligned to the FinOps Foundation's best practice and philosophy. So yeah, can you comment on that?
Yeah, so there are several, like in the FinOps practice, there's sort of like 3 stages of maturity: crawl, walk, and run. And I think that Ternary is good at helping people that are in each stage of it. So basically, the first stage, crawl, is just about connecting all of your data sources and then getting to that chart that finally has all of your multi-cloud expenses apportioned by the teams that create them. So we have features that help people correct the incoming data so that it better matches the sort of like responsible groups. Like, you can group projects by team or teams by business unit and, be able to slice and dice your spend that way. So we help people get through that stage. Walking is more about finding commitments that you can do. So optimizing the price you pay for compute and other services like databases. And so we help you then surface the optimizations that are we think are available for your use. And obviously, you can't just press a button and do it. You need to think whether you're gonna use that service for long enough to make the commitment worth it. But we give you that fodder to think about. Then at the run phase, we support unit economics, which is sort of like, you're not even thinking about the amount of dollars you spend in cloud anymore. You're not saying, oh, this team spent, $60,000 per month. You instead say, well, the team spent, I'm going to make up a number, right? Like $10, like $1 per $10 of gross revenue that this, particular part of your stack creates, right? That's, and not even worrying about periodic ups and downs, as long as the business outputs follow that perfectly, then it should be a flat line, right? And so that it gives you sort of less to worry about, and also helps de-dramatize the, oh my gosh, this service costs $1.5 million a month. Once you've taken that out of the equation, it becomes, much easier to reason through your health and cost of operation. So basically, Ternary provides features that support all phases of the FinOps model, because that's why we thought of bringing them in, is because we knew that people will want to find out these things in each stage of the FinOps cycle.
Because as far as the numbers in terms of accrual, walk, and run, and appreciate you kind of alluded to a little bit on the run, but what benefits in terms of numbers and savings have you found? I guess what's your best case scenario accrual, your best case scenario a walk, and your best case scenario a run that you've experienced as a Ternary?
Like how much savings could a company accomplish at each stage? Well, I would say that if someone is not doing any kind of FinOps at all, literally just not looking at their bill, I would say the biggest drop comes from just the crawl stage, because that's when you decide, okay, I'm intending to go look at my spend. I'm intending to attribute it to my teams, and attribute my teams to my business outputs, and sort of, get a gauge of like what makes sense. And usually within that first sort of visibility moment, people discover, oh my gosh, I've got all this fleet of servers I wasn't using because an engineer turned them on 6 months ago and never used them. Like that happens during our discovery, our kind of Ternary trial sales motion so many times. So they, many customers just get value from having the data connected and visible, and you can see it on a graph over time. Then at the walk stage, I would say that's when you start to do what we call rate optimization, which is when you start to figure out how can I save on I'm not going to change what I'm using, but I'm going to change how much I pay for it by committing to use. Usually the savings there tend to be about 15 to 20%. At that point. And then at run, I kind of feel like you're not really seeing it in terms of savings anymore. In fact, I think graduating from a savings mentality is the sort of space brain of FinOps, right? Because a lot of people arrive at FinOps with a mandate to save. They've got a finance team that is really looking to cut costs. They're trying to find it in different places, like laying off people, which is happening a lot these days. And they're looking for, hey, this cloud bill is really big. Can we just cut it? And without any awareness or context over what that could mean. So I think that by the time you reach run, you achieve savings by not letting yourself get into scenarios where you've wasted money in the first place, perhaps. And
makes sense.
And that is a way to think about savings that you achieve in the run stage. But to me, if you're at the run stage, you're not thinking about savings mentality anymore. Just thinking about operational everyday, check your KPIs, how is your cost per cart, cost per unit. That's all that really matters.
I mean, to many of the listeners, they will be ITAMers, and for them to provide, I've saved this much money, it is all a forecasting, because of course they're stopping people from doing that.
Exactly.
So it makes so much sense what you just mentioned there.
If you're enjoying listening to this episode, please show your support and take this short break to like and subscribe to the series and beyond. One more thing, if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, share the love and share this episode. Thank you.
How does your tool set up?
Yeah, it's sort of a read-only process. The great thing about public cloud is that, everything is accessible with APIs that are accessible on public internet. So basically, we just need to get permissions to read your bill, to access some of the APIs that are are typically used for developer metrics. So we can see utilization. We can see hey, you have 50 compute instances and they're all at 10% CPU usage. We want to get that information so we can report on that. So just API access into each cloud provider that you want, access to a billing file, which you might have to set up on your end before we can read it. And then from there, we just go and fetch it every couple hours, check for updates, and then update what you see in the platform. So, I don't think it's point and click just yet. I think the cloud providers, have to help us in that area too. But it is pretty like, it's solved.
Brilliant. So that trial period, I mean, typically, how long is that trial period that you implement within the potential customers?
We're aiming for like trial cycles of like no more than 1 to 2 months. I think we're sort of in an enterprise software space where typically things really stretch out like, a very long time. So we'd like to keep that tight and keep slim. And like from a product and from a product perspective, we really want to show value right away, right? And then just be like, okay, obviously the value is there. Do we have a deal? But with enterprise companies, it's a lot harder than that. And I would say like the more you spend in cloud, the bigger the company is, the longer the sales cycle is. That's just a fact. So and that's why we're enjoying the success we're seeing with the sort of reseller market, where it's like, okay, we don't have to do the direct sales. We've already, inked the deal with the provider, and they're just going to do the onboarding themselves. So that's a great situation for us.
A common challenge that's often vocalized by the FinOps Foundation and the ITAM industry is been how FinOps and ITAM can become one.
I think that there's definitely room, right, for organizations to design their cloud financial governance, and align it with IT. Like I've talked to a couple of people in the past, 3-4 months that said, yeah, like, I'm moving from a team that's housed under finance to a team that's housed under IT. So, what's the responsibility of ITAM? What's the responsibility of finance? But like, I would say that right now, finance teams are getting a little smarter about public cloud, and that's taking a bit of work away from ITAM. And so I kind of feel like if the IT function gets closer to finance, sort of from a hierarchical perspective, and the way they report into each other and the way they collaborate, that's probably like the best way that I can think of to deepen the bond, right? And I think ITAMs could be assisting a lot with FinOps because they have more of the technical context, right? And they have more of the ability to look through optimizations, look through different ways to get the same thing done, and engage engineering on decision making. Whereas finance is usually a little less able to have an opinion, I would say, other than, seeing how the financial vehicles of investment compare to each other. I think that the IT vertical is pretty well positioned to be a bridging partner between engineering and finance, but the organizations have to support it.
100%. I mean, I guess with all these issues with the cloud, that we are starting to see more enterprise with more issues, the more questions are being asked, and people will be able to put their hands up. So maybe it's about knowing when to put your hand up,
right?
To then jump in and show your value as an IT asset manager.
Yeah, it's kind of an established industry, and then there's like an upset that's happening where it's like, wait, that's my job.
Yep.
But the organization that you might have been in might not have supported you being a stakeholder of, the cost of production. It's just that probably the alarm bell went off and went directly to finance, and they are like, okay, who did that? And went directly down to engineering, and the IT people are just like, wait, what about me?
Certainly the narrative I hear. In your opinion, then, what is the biggest challenge that the FinOps industry faces today for the consumers of your product?
Yeah, so I think as you spend more, the cloud providers are more likely to give you like, special pricing, custom, spend vehicles, basically like, hey, like if you agree to a deal where you spend like this much in this month, this much in this month, this much in this month, and go all the way up, ladder yourself all the way up to a desired level of spend that's pleasing to the cloud provider, then they'll give you a 20% discount and everything. Like these types of things exist the more you spend. And I kind of feel like, FinOps doesn't really capture those nuances. I mean, at the tool level, they definitely don't, because like these are all like handshake agreements and written, PDF contracts, and they get applied like at the last minute after all of the data has gone through the system, right? platforms, tools like ours have a challenge to bring as much of that world in as we reasonably can and help the customer model their true expense, given all of their contracts, given all of their vehicles of, investment. And that's a hard problem for us just because the data isn't there. So I think it's about data availability and data visibility from the various services that you can use. It's a battle it's a problem that's getting better. There's a new billing standard called Focus, which is being created by the foundation, which, I don't think it's there yet in terms of these arcane enterprise contract discounts, but it's providing at least one single, platonic ideal language for any provider of usage-based services to provide a single schema to describe the charges that they're giving the customer, right? And if all providers of services are able to conform to that schema, then it just makes the problem solving less custom, right? You don't have to combine so many foreign data sources together to get a clear picture of your FinOps. And that's whether you're a user of a tool or not.
So as far as the cloud providers, are they all going to follow this process of having that very clear guidance in terms of how it's worded and what people are purchasing? Or will they still have their own rules that they...
I think for the foreseeable future, they will still have their own rules, but they are playing ball with Focus. So all of the major cloud providers have signed on and agreed to, provide a data feed in the Focus format, or at least offer you a conversion from their, original bill to Focus. So I would say they're playing ball, but I think it's only the beginning of a trend of community accountability being asked for from the cloud providers, and this is their first step in that direction of listening to the community. So I think there's going to have to be lots more of that in order to sort of put the balance of power back towards the community, because I think that we've all gotten used to this idea that you can sign on to build your business using a public cloud provider, and at a certain point, you're just kind of accepting that they will charge you. You're going to do something that can charge you $250,000 in 10 minutes, and you're going to need to beg for forgiveness if there's no way around that. And I don't know. There's been many articles that I've read about here's my experience causing a $72,000 accident as a single individual on a cloud provider, and in the end, they ended up getting on a call with the cloud provider who forgave the charges. So if you think about this power dynamic from an outside perspective, it's just wow, we literally gave these providers so much power to just charge us money, and only through their good graces could we not be owing that money, right? Instead, a world where the people who are initiating the spend have more control over that spend. I think that's where the community wants to head. So I think we'll head there with the help of, driving forces like the FinOps Foundation and its community will help push for those controls to exist. Yeah, and I think crossing that mountain is one of the big hurdles of FinOps.
And it's amazing to see how much awareness the FinOps Foundation have within the market already. And as you mentioned there, it's obviously helping to bring the power back to the community. I mean, to kind of put it as a software asset management, IT asset management world. I mean, you have the Oracles, the IBMs, and Microsofts, right, the SAPs,
the juggernauts,
and they have all completely separate licensing rules, which, of course, there's a whole industry that's been spawned from that. Because, and I definitely I can probably guarantee that they're never going to be told to have a similar approach to how they license and how they charge. So it's absolutely fantastic to have almost centralized structure to how it's consumed. Is that'd be fantastic. stops stops a lot of people getting confused and making some
Yeah,
stupid
I mean,
mistakes.
the confusion is amazing because it's just like one day of usage of even a small company. Like, I mean, I could consider ourselves still small, but our daily, bill feed is 3-4 million rows of hourly based, data. Can you imagine going to a restaurant and getting a receipt that's 4 million lines long? That's wild, right? Like it exists in no other place.
Yeah. Well, I guess going back to, I mean, that's the reason why your tool is providing the service it is.
Right,
It's
exactly.
creating an easy platform for people to review it. Starting in 2020, what have you learned from your journey with Ternary? And I guess, is there anything you would have done differently, or anything you're looking forward to implementing in the future?
Yeah, um I think that I learned very quickly that we are going to have to make all the mistakes in order to learn. And the direction that you're heading in right now might, well, like, you shouldn't lose confidence just because you think that what you're heading into might eventually be some kind of mistake. Like, but if you plan your mistakes carefully, you'll at least learn something great out of it. And I think that's sort of my I've been very humbled by being a co-founder of a startup and needing to uh help point the company towards where we think it should go next because, this FinOps area is evolving. It's a very challenging market because it's not like, stable or predictable. It's still forming itself and self-identifying the values that matter to it day by day. So I think that, perhaps we were a bit like less focused than we could have been because we were trying to follow all the twists and turns of what was important to people in the FinOps community. But it took us a while to arrive at a very tight and strong hypothesis over like, okay, like, this is who we want to be. This is how we want to help people. This is how we think people should collaborate. And then like push that hypothesis via our product. And, I think when you build a product that's as self-explanatory as we want it to be, I don't think we're fully there yet, but like, I think its value speaks for itself. So I think, yeah, deciding how to evolve your product according to what you're seeing in the market is shouldn't be overshadowed by like, having this belief and hypothesis and what you really want to see people do with your products. We've been juggling that, but we've gotten here. We've gotten past our Series A round. So, overall, through all the twists and turns, I think we're thriving, right? Like, we haven't eliminated all the competitors yet, but that'll come soon.
I mean, okay, you don't have a crystal ball. I mean, that's for sure.
No,
so
not at all.
You're bound to make mistakes.
Exactly.
Do you foresee any major shifts in the industry that, and I guess, and how are you positioning yourself to adapt or lead?
Well, I think AI is one of the more interesting trends in SaaS and cloud spend because you can either choose to do, AI via like a service like ChatGPT or Anthropic, or you can choose to kind of roll your own, and then that just uses like a ton of like, graphics processors running in the cloud. And I think that's sort of the next frontier. I don't know if any FinOps platform, including us, is really servicing the needs of AI heavy organizations yet, other than, yeah, we can show you that you spent on GPUs, but we can't give you that deeper insight. And I think the foundation is, also sort of like soul searching a little bit on like, what does it mean to do like FinOps for AI? Like, is it the same because it's, often operated on public cloud, or is it different because there's sort of like nuance and specificity to AI expenses as opposed to, standard public cloud or SaaS expenses? So I think that's an emerging field, and no one really has the answer yet. We are finding it out right now. I'm in a working group trying to figure out what it all means. So I think that's a next frontier among many.
So watch the space in terms of Ternary
Yeah,
and
watch
AI.
this space. Yeah.
Cool. Good. I asked you during our introductory call, what were you focusing on? What the next kind of initiative would be? And we have touched on it a little bit already, but well, you're focusing on focus. And
Yeah.
when do you think Ternary will have have all of that aligned into their product?
So focus is a very active effort right now. I think by end of this year, we'll have some visible results that customers can actually use. A lot of tooling is happening under the hood too, at the same time, to improve, hey, okay, like now that we've made this assumption that, billing data can come in this very clean format, we can clean up a lot of other, custom things that we do. So we're busy making sure we can reap the benefits of that internally before we release it. But, at the end of that, we'll be able to use the focus like taxonomy and terminology of, values and dimensions and groupings to visualize your billing data. And you'll also be able to bring in raw focus files that, this hasn't actually happened yet, but a random vendor shows up with a focus file and says, hey, you can go download our focus file and integrate it. Well, we'll be in a position to let you stick that somewhere we have access to, and we can go pull it in as it drops in from the cloud vendor or cloud provider or SaaS. So yeah, end of year for that.
Fantastic. Also, I'm sure the listeners will be certainly interested to take a run on that. So, final couple of questions here. Hey, takeaways. It's what we're here for as well, to provide a bit of takeaway as part of the Off Menu podcast. And I know you mentioned you had quite an interesting hack and trick that you often utilize within your customers. What is?
Yeah. So, well, this might be kind of specific to, if your organization uses Kubernetes, but pretty often when we onboard or trial a customer that's using Kubernetes, and we start to hook up to their utilization of what their workloads are doing, we find that they're all massively over provisioned. So like a lot of times people's savings from Kubernetes, as soon as they see this graph that just says, you've reserved this much CPU for all of your workloads, and what they're using is this much down here at the bottom. So it's just like, as soon as they see that graph, they are able to go to their engineering team and be like, hey, like, why did you ask for 4 CPUs for this workload? And when they go action that, they just reduce their Kubernetes costs by like a lot. I'm going to say like, sometimes almost half, depending on what it is. But like, for some reason, the native tooling doesn't make it that obvious to look into that sort of like level of like utilized versus requested CPU. And the developers are in a position of spending power, essentially, because they, when they code their workload and their Kubernetes definitions for it, they say, I want this many CPUs and I want this much RAM, but they don't really know how much RAM it needs until they like, unless they do like some very intensive, like, stress test, right? But they're just going to say like, oh, 1 should be fine or 2 should be fine. And RAM, well, my laptop has 8 gigs of RAM, so maybe I'll give it 8 gigs of RAM. And it's almost always way too much. So if you're working on a Kubernetes deployment and you can tell the engineers, influence over the engineers, you can say, hey, maybe try just using very little first and then increase it until the service is working well. That would probably save a lot of people a lot of cores.
If it's common practice that engineers using Kubernetes are typically using 50% more than they need to, then yeah, that is an instant takeaway for many of our and I guess that's what happens when you're going through your crawl period, in terms of one of the many quick wins that Ternary would be able to offer you, which is fantastic.
Right, exactly. And it's a part of the overall theme of like, when you have visibility, when you see the data right in front of you in a way that's understandable and actionable, action is actually pretty easy, but you just need to have the data in the right shape and at the right level of detail, right? You're not going to get any value from seeing 4 million rows. The human eye can probably like make sense of like 15 to 20 different like dimensions at most.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a great takeaway. but it wouldn't actually be the off menu podcast without the food. I hear you are a bit of a foodie.
Yeah, New York City is a great place to live, to be a foodie.
I've unfortunately never been, but I would love to go and try some of the many spots I see on Instagram. But what is your favorite takeaway?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, in my area, there's a lot of great food from sort of like broadly South Asia, so like Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and also Tibet and Nepal. And the latter two are foods that I'd never tried before I came to, my part of New York where I live now. So they have like really delicious dumplings called momos, which are phenomenal. And you phenomenal and ubiquitous, cheap, like that's the best thing. And then like, we're adjacent to like Latino neighborhoods, Mexican, Colombian, Venezuelan, and phenomenal empanadas, tacos, tamales. Yeah, you can't go wrong here with food. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Josh, really appreciate it. Been a great guest, and
Yeah,
really
thank you so much.
happy
I
to
really
have you.
enjoyed it.
Well, we've reached the end, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you want any further information about our guests, then their LinkedIn profile and contact information can be found in the episode notes. I do have one more section, which is a request for your involvement. I created this following multiple members of our community suggesting I should, and this is a community-driven platform that is created to help you. So if you know of any alternative solutions within our industry or related to the ITAM industry, I want to hear from you. Help me to interview those that you want to learn about. So please comment or reach out directly with your ideas. Let me help you to discover what is best for your environment. Finally, any feedback is welcomed. I really want to improve this podcast. The better this gets, the better the information you'll receive. So please help me to ask the questions that are relevant to you so you get the answers. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But please also share with your colleagues and industry peers if you feel it's relevant.